start seedlings indoors.
Wow.
Now, here's some of the benefits. And, I'm just going to read through them quick. Extend your growing season. Like I mentioned before, you can add 30 to 60 days. If you start indoors, well, of course, it has all that time to grow while there's even still snow outside. And then more options. With an extended growing season, you can grow plants with longer maturation requirements. So some plants that we wouldn't otherwise be able to grow because of the lack of days, here we can easily handle more of those plants. And so, more opportunities for us. And then it's cost effective. One pack of seeds costs generally $3 to $5, and it gives you anywhere, depending on the variety, 10 seeds to hundreds of seeds. Whereas if you buy a seedling in the store, it will cost you anywhere from $2.50 to $5, almost the same amount, just for one plant. So this way, by starting your own seedlings, you can save a lot of money. And then the other thing is longer availability. Since you can start plants early, and you can start plants anytime you want, you can also plant into your garden seedlings that are, fair size, halfway through the season or 2/3 of the way through the season if they have a short maturation period. And you can have these fresh startups right at the time when, most of the stores aren't selling, seedlings anymore. I mean, there are big pushes in the spring, and then it extends a little bit more, but mid-June or whatever, you're not going to have a lot of varieties of vegetables in seedling form that you can put in your garden. So longer availability. And this way, like, you can have, like lettuces, fresh young lettuces right out in, right into the autumn time. Okay. Learning, well, of course, benefits, again, learning and teaching opportunities for spending more time with our kids at home now, and your kids can learn some biology and good work habits in a family setting. And then last of all is enjoyment. It's a great feeling to experience growing your own food. I'm not going to read all these questions, but these are the questions we're going to run through just to read a few. When should I start my seedlings? Number 2, what plants are better suited to start indoors? Then go down to number 9, how should I plant my seeds? Number 10, how do I enhance root growth? Anyway, if you're interested in reading all of these, you can do that at a later date. But we're going to run through all of those. The first one here is, when should I start my seedlings? When? That's the big thing. And most people, they get really excited. We're going to do our own seedlings. And the problem is they don't do the math, and they start the seedlings way too early. And then they have this massive, big, stringy, all kinds of startups sitting in their basement or upstairs on some tables, and things kind of got away from them. But I don't know of many gardeners who don't do this. Somehow, from year to year, unless we've got it written in the calendar, we tend to get too excited and start up plants a bit too early. So so the first thing you want to do is calculate your seedling startup schedule. That's what you want to do. And the general guideline is, for most varieties of veggies, you want to start them 4 to 6 weeks before the last frost. Here in Red Deer, it's May 31, and you wouldn't even hurt to wait a week, the end of the first week of June, to put in your seedlings. And there's sometimes we even get a frost, on that May long weekend. So, and the next few days. So you're not going, if you already have seedlings started and they've been going for a month, you're already ahead. And don't get too excited, put them out too early, and then they get killed by the frost just because, it was just, unless you have some kind of a covering, like some kind of a greenhouse sort of a covering, and then maybe you can do that. Okay, and then calculate your seedling startup, generally 4 to 6 weeks. But check the packets on the seeds, because on the back, you'll notice that there are germination variations. So and germination periods can range from anywhere from 3 to 20 days. So you might want to keep that in mind, that, yes, a month ahead, but it won't even be up for 10 days. So back up 10 days from that and start it up. Okay. And herbs and spices, I just wanted to mention that most of the varieties of herbs and spices, you can start about 2 months ahead of time, 2 months before the last frost. They take longer. Okay, now here is just this is this chart, and it's a reference chart. We're not going to go through the whole thing. It's just to help you know how to plan. And so this is when to start planting. If you notice on the left side, it says vegetable seed starting chart, and on the right, it's an herb planting chart. And it's for zone 3, and that's what we are here in central Alberta. We are at a zone 3. And so notice on the left again, it tells you the vegetable, the type of vegetable, and then in the center column, it says start indoors, and then outside plant outdoors. So this gives you a choice when you want to, if you want to start it indoors, this is when you can do it. And if you want to plant outdoors, that's direct seeding, follow that schedule over there. Now, it even depends on the part of the cities where you're at. Your schedule might be a little bit different, but if you're just starting out, this is a good way to start, and you'll have adjustments for the next year, but take some notes along the way, and you'll have more accurate times for starting your seedlings the next year around. Keep a little notebook, but you'll notice there it says start indoors, and it has all those dates for the different types of plants. Now we're gonna come back to this later. And on the right side, there it gives you a chart on how to deal with herbs and all that. But okay, let's go to the next one. What plants are better suited to start indoors? Obviously, there's some plants that aren't suited. Like if you're going to start corn indoors, and it's not really recommended that you start corn too much, but I mean, we've done it a lot, and it seems to work as long as you don't disturb the roots when you transplant it. But you know, it takes a bit for the corn to start, but when it starts, man, it shoots up fast. So if you're planning on keeping it under some lights, the height of that is going to far outstrip the other plant height growth patterns, and your light isn't going to be close enough to the other plants to benefit them, and it's not going to be high enough to make space, you know, to make space for this fast-growing vegetable. So there are plants that are better suited to start indoors. Here, plant size. Some grow tall quickly and others slowly. So remember that, you know, at least know that before you start something. If you have like 2 light systems, you can have one for the ones that grow tall, and for the ones that grow shorter and that are smaller, you can have another light system for them. You could do it that way. Okay, remember, it says here, choose suitable varieties for indoor startups. Number 2, notice that there is a difference between determinate and indeterminate for some varieties, like especially beans and peas. And the determinate means there's a determined size. It's normally we call that the bush style of bean and pea plant. But then there's the indeterminate. It means it can keep on growing, and that's more the vine varieties of peas and beans and things like that. So if you're going to start the vine type, again, remember, you don't want to start it so early that you're going to have this long viney kind of a stringy plant by the time it comes time to transplant outside. Okay, then there's vertical varieties allow space. Just know that vertical varieties allow space for more planting. So I like to plant the indeterminate, because I can put a stick outside when I transplant it, and it can grow right up that stick. And that means all that space that it would have taken up on the ground is free. Why? Because it's growing up the stick. And that means that you can plant other stuff in front of this, you know, the stick, where normally it would just be a maze of all these, of all this plant material from the peas or the beans. And so I do like starting them, but therefore I will probably start maybe only like 2 or 3 weeks before they go outside, because I only want them about that big when I put them outside, and so that because I know they're going to take off, they're really going to grow fast. Okay, then I like to start seed plants that are continuous harvest plants. So example, lettuce, kale, beans, tomatoes, hot peppers. These kinds of plants, as they grow, especially leaf lettuce, you can just cut the whole thing off the top, leaving a few 4 inches or so, and it'll just grow right back again. And you can get like 3 or 4 harvests out of that one leaf lettuce rather than a head lettuce, right? So it will just keep producing for you, and it'll give you 3 or 4. Well, it'll work. It'll keep growing all summer, but after about 3 or 4 cuttings, they start to go a little bit bitter. So that's when you'd want to trade it out with a brand new seedling about this big of lettuce that you have started indoors in the meantime. But choose continuous harvest plants, lettuce, kale, beans. You can constantly cut them. You're constantly picking the beans. You're constantly, picking the tomatoes. If it's a cherry tomato plant, there's a long period in which you can harvest, and hot peppers as well. They just keep coming up, and you harvest them. The more you harvest them, within reason, the more lush and plush, and the more they produce. So if you do not kind of prune and pick little hot peppers along the way, everything will slow down, and you'll have lots of peppers, but you just won't have peppers, really producing. Okay, and then remember that when you're planting, think about staple varieties. What do you eat a lot of in the family? What do you normally eat a lot of? Now, of course, you don't want to plant potatoes, indoors. You don't want to start carrots indoors. Those are things that are direct seed only for the most part. But what things do you eat a lot of? And in other words, what do you usually buy in the store as a family? And so these things that you normally buy, you eat a lot of, those are the things that you can, within reason, on the variety, that you can start indoors. Okay. Now, here's this chart again, vegetable seed starting chart and herb planting chart. And instead of looking at the dates this time in the center column on the left chart, look at all those little X's. You see the X's in the middle part of the chart? Well, those are the kind that they suggest not to start indoors. They're probably varieties you wouldn't want to. So I'll just read some of them. Beans. Yeah, it says there beans, the bush or the pole, because they grow so fast, but I don't mind starting them and having them 3 or 4 inches tall by the time by the time we can put it out there and it's frost free. That gives them a boost. That saves you, waiting 10 days for the pea seeds to start. So I don't mind starting those, but not a month ahead and all that. Okay, so beans, beets, carrots, corn, although I just told you can with corn, but again, you have to time it. Garlic, yeah, you don't want to do garlic. Kale is okay, but leeks, generally not. Onions, sets, parsnips, peas, potatoes, radish. Radish do not do well if you transplant them. You just start them out. They grow so fast anyway. You can get numerous harvests on radishes from multiple seedings if you stagger the seedings in one season. So spinach, Swiss chard. Why can't you do like Swiss chard and spinach? Well, these are types that you would normally do. Like you can harvest, you can multiple harvest them, but they are a little bit touchier, more delicate to transplant. And what I would say, I would still go ahead with those, especially spinach, Swiss chard, but I would plant them in a fairly large, like a 3-inch pot. And then when I transplant it, I would transplant the whole thing into the ground without disturbing it. Try and hold the whole thing together. Don't like pull it all apart and just plant the plant in with the roots. Just don't disturb it. Take the whole thing out and plant it all the way in so it doesn't even know it's been transplanted. Okay. Number 3, are some seeds better than others? Okay, this is where we're going to look at just a little bit at choice of seeds. Definitely, I would say non-GMO. And, I know there is a lot of argument about this, and people talk ethics and whatever. But increasingly, farmers are abandoning GMO varieties in numerous countries, especially vegetable, all this kind of thing. And to tell you the truth, there's not a whole lot of vegetables yet that are GMO. Okay, but there are certain crops that are, and many of the corn crops, there's a lot of GMO corn crops. But what farmers are saying is like, the like for the BT corn that they used in the States, I mean, it is registered as an insecticide, not a food. And what it means is that when an insect bites any part of that plant, it's going to die because of the insecticide. The problem is the insects have gotten immune to it. And so now they have to spray them anyway. So now you buy this expensive GMO seed and now you have to spray it anyway. I mean, how much do we want to spray these things? And then as a result, put that inside of us and our children. And the other thing that they're saying is that they don't grow better. They don't give a better crop. And also they don't store as well. They don't store as long in the bags. And I've talked to farmers in Africa, and they say, look, we didn't mind trying it out, but it was bad because partway through the season, you know, our corn started going bad. And I mean, they have, where I was in Africa, they had like corn or corn products in just about every meal. It was kind of like, you know, the Asians with their rice. If they don't have rice for every meal kind of a thing, for many of them, they don't feel like they've eaten. And so corn products, corn flour, corn is very important for many people in Africa. So anyway, that's enough on GMO. And also with GMO, you can't save the seeds because GMO seeds are leased. They're expensive. You lease them for a year. It is illegal to collect them and replant them. The problem is when you replant them, if you replant them, that's in itself illegal because of the way they've set it up. But there are many GMO plants that even if they produce seeds, when you plant them, they won't produce. So they're like kind of like a suicide seed. They last one season and then they don't produce after that. So I would say don't need it, especially if you've got gardens and you're doing all this kind of thing. And mostly you don't have to worry about that, but just stay away from GMO. Untreated. And okay, in many countries, when you get the seeds and you look at them, they're not the original color of the seed. They're purple and green and blue. And that's because an insecticide has been applied onto them. So I would stay away from those as much as possible as well. Then hybrids. Now hybrids are good. Everybody buys hybrids, and these are a lot of the seed types that you buy in the store are hybrids. And basically it's the mixing of the mixed genetics of compatible species or varieties of seeds. The only thing about hybrids is that they're not great for saving the seeds and then reseeding because of the hybridization. You never know what feature in the next generation is going to display or not. And so you just don't know exactly what you're going to get. It might work for 1 or 2 years, or it might not work. You just don't know. So good companies. So I would say, if you look at the bottom, I should have put that up further. Get heirloom seeds. And other words for heirloom seeds are original, ancient, open pollinated. But basically it means they're genetically unaltered and they're more original varieties. And that means that if you could save the seeds of those, it's legal to do that, and you can replant them. And when you replant them, you can be assured that basically that you're going to get the same plant the next year. You're going to get that variety again next year. And so heirloom might cost just a little bit more, but I would say go for those. Go for the ones that you can build a seed store for and utilize. You know, if you do it right, for most of these, you get a good heirloom seed packet to begin with. And if you leave a few of the plants out to go to seed, you never have to buy those seeds again. And, you know, seeds are expensive. Like we spend like $100 or more every year just on seeds with all the varieties and everything. And sometimes because there's not a ton of seeds in the packets, we have to buy multiple packets. So that's why it adds up pretty quickly. Okay, good companies, West Coast Seeds here in Alberta. West Coast Seeds out in BC. I've left the links there. Yeah, you can go and click on those links or type in those addresses and look for that. Wild Rose Heritage Seed Company out of Lethbridge is really great. And you can get a hold of them as well. And then Seed Savers, they have their website. Rethink Red Deer sells this variety. PV Mart puts out seeds this January. In fact, they're already out. Since January 9 this year, they're out in the stores, and other stores are starting to put them out. So I would say buy your seeds right away because there may be a rush this year with COVID and all that. on seeds. So get your seeds before there is, a run on the seed banks. Saved seeds, of course, to me, that's the most. I mentioned that a little bit earlier. Saved seeds gather information about your property and they download it to future generation of seeds that you save, and so that your seeds become the best for your property. They, it's like, yeah, okay, here I grew up, I was born and raised in Alberta, but then I lived for 20 years in the Philippines. Like I had to adjust a lot, but some of my kids, they just, from babies on, they're born, they're raised there. And I tell you, they just thrived. Why? Because they were raised in that environment. Same with seeds. When you plant an heirloom seed into your garden, and then you let some of them go to seed, they'll be collecting genetic information about what's missing and what's difficult, whatever, to what they went through in order to be successful in your garden. And that information is downloaded into the genetics of the next seed generation. So it is really advantageous if you can save your own seeds and keep them from year to year. They get smarter, they're not suicide seeds, they're smarter seeds, okay, from year to year. So that's all I want to say on seeds. Here are some pictures that I took at PV Mart, and it shows you the kind. Actually, these are called heirloom, and I really think they are. But just because something says heritage on it or heirloom doesn't mean they are, right? So look at the back and make sure it says something like open pollinated or original or something. Somebody might just take it as a label. You never know with how people how companies advertise these days. But in this case, yes, heritage and heirloom, I think they're original varieties, and they work pretty good. Okay, how many plants should I start? I would say more than you think you should. Okay, but so here it is. Calculate how many of each variety of seed you will need. And some people are shooting for, well, I just want a little bit of extra so I can throw it in and say, hey, we grew this and feel good. And then you have people on the other end of the spectrum that say, well, we want to grow enough for our whole family for an annual amount. So that's why I got that picture there, 1 year of food, question mark. Something that will depend on how much you can grow, I suppose, and how much space you have. But it's a very amazing how many hundreds of pounds you can grow just in an average house and lot here in the city. Now, we got some charts coming up in the next screen. There are some calculator apps that tell you how many plants of each variety you should grow per person to cover an annual amount, an annual requirement for people in your family. So I know there's calculator apps. I looked at some of my older ones, but we had upgraded phones, and the old apps didn't work in the new phones. So there's an example where you upgrade your technology and you lose a vital piece of information because the apps didn't follow, the new technologies, the upcoming technologies. Okay, and then what I would say though is whenever you figure out exactly how many plants per person you need, plant 30% more of each, because you never know with weather or maybe a hail or a wind or something, or even some animals. Deer can create havoc. If there's deer in the city here, they stroll around at night and they can come and take down a bunch of your vegetables, especially lettuces and all that, very quickly if you're not careful. So I would say start 30% more seedlings than what you calculate you'll need for your purposes. So anyway, if you don't have a clue how much you need or how much you eat, well, now's the time to become a little bit of a researcher and just get out a piece of paper and start keeping track for a month of the kinds of things you eat, your peppers, lettuce, tomatoes, beans, potato, whatever. And then you can calculate, extrapolate out a little bit more of how many pounds that would mean in an entire year for your family. And then when you look at the varieties of plants that you're growing, you can actually, generally calculate in the ballpark, how much weight each of those items will produce and how compared to how much you need, and then arrive at a fairly accurate thing. This might take you to, maybe a couple, 3 seasons of growing to figure out accurately Okay, now here are some examples, and you can use this. We're not going to read all of this, but if you look at the left chart, it says at the top crop on the left column as well, and it tells you all the types of plants that there are. Okay, and then per person, 5 to 10 plants per person. For a family of 4, 25. Now you will go through this and you'll say, oh, we don't even eat that much of that. And then you'll say, oh, that's way too little. We would eat way more of that. Okay, well, good. So, but this is kind of like a default, a general start. So if you don't know how to calculate or what you're doing, and you don't know where to start, this is a good place to start. You can improve next year, right? And if you can, by looking at that, if you know that it's too little, we'll make the adjustment even on the first year. Okay. Now, on the right side, it says gardening fundamentals, grow enough food. How much to plant in a vegetable garden? And again, there is, it gives you the crop that you're growing and the number of plants to grow per person. So anyway, these are guides to help you guesstimate, as you're starting, how many seedlings you should start up. Okay, now what containers should I use? Well, match the container size with the plant, right? So some plants don't transplant easily, so use bigger pots. For the plants that transplant easily, you can put them in these little tiny, cube systems that you see there on the photo. You can do that like lettuce. You can do that. You can even do herbs that way if you want. But others don't transplant. In other words, when you move them from one size to another size, the disturbance shocks them and they don't do well and they may not survive as well, or they may just slow down and have to recover for a while before they get growing again. So if it's if it's one of them that really recovers fast and does well, yeah, use those small ones. And for the most part, a lot of them that we start are about the size that you see there. That's the cubicle, not the one on the very left. That's a little bit small, but the one on the right, in the middle, and on the right, on the bottom there, those are average cell sizes. And if you have a choice, don't get a shallow cell, get a longer cell, like a 2.5-inch cell. That seems to allow the root system to grow a little bit nicer and healthier in a way. Okay, so plants, it says there that transplant easily may be started in small containers and transferred into larger ones later before finally transplanting outside. The ones that they don't like being transplanted too well, like I would say, like the corn, you don't want to get it like this and then transplant it and into a bigger one until the day comes when you can put them outside. No, you don't want that. You start with a bigger pot, and then you will, when it grows up about this high, about 1 foot tall, and that's how much it'll be by the time you transplant it there in June, then you just take the whole thing. The whole thing comes out, and you put it in there, and away it goes, and it's not going to be shocked. Okay, so container size. Some plants do not transplant well. Here's a list. So these are lists like corn, squash, cucumbers, melons, beans. So normally you put them in a bigger, just a one-time seedling start before you put them outside if you're going to do that. So use bigger pots for them. And then there's, yeah, and then basically that says what I've just gone through. Okay, plants that transplant easily may be started in small containers. You can see an example there. Those are pretty much small, and they're actually medium. Well, you can see the very little ones, and those little black cells in the trays on the picture before, those are smaller, and but these are like a little bit more medium. For those that you only want to do once, and they're going to be fairly large before you get them outside, get the 3-inch pots. Just get some 3-inch pots. You'll do yourself a favor. It'll be less hassle, less problems, and the transplant will go better. Okay, I really like these mini greenhouse systems, especially for herbs, because one of the problems with herbs and starting herbs, and people have a lot of trouble starting herbs, is that it's not warm enough. And this thing has a heating pad on the bottom, and it comes with the discs. And by the way, those discs are fantastic. They are great. They are just ideal for starting seeds. And I have a friend who has a greenhouse, And he used to do all kinds of things. He just buys those discs now because he says they have the best starts in those discs. They're a little bit pricier, and this system is a little bit pricey. What is that? What does it say there? Let me read it. 59. So that's $60. They used to be like 20 something, but I mean, maybe they gotten popular. But you can start 72 plants in that system. Watering it doesn't take much work because you just pour it in the tray and it waters all 72 at once. And then it has that heating element underneath the system. And then, of course, a little canopy, a transparent canopy, which creates a bit of a greenhouse effect. And water that evaporates gathers on the top, and then it falls. And so you don't have to water as much. Much easier to be successful and less work when you use these. Of course, you pay for it. Okay, now that shows you here, you have these little discs down there. They're little tiny discs about a 1/4 inch high. And then when you fill the tray, it just floods into these discs and they just swell up and they look like that when they've swelled up. Okay, reuse or make free containers. Now you reuse food containers from the store. Like I love like using like yogurt containers. These are fantastic. Why get a pot? I mean, it has to be somewhat food safe because they're putting food items in here, right? There must be some kind of regulation on the plastics used here. But I like these, especially for those that you don't want to transplant. Start them in these. You never have to worry about, whether they're going to do well or whether they're going to transplant well. Maybe ones with more shallow roots, you can do something like this, as like sour cottage cheese container. And or here's another one. These Activa yogurt containers. I kind of like these for startups as well. So if you're one of these Activa yogurt in the morning fanatics and you've got dozens and dozens and dozens of these, why pay money? Reuse these, upcycle these, and use them in your growth thing. Now here, this kind of thing, here you can get these. Now all of these I get for free because near the end of the seedling season, I go not dumpster diving. I just go into the back of stores and like Walmart, they have like scads of these things just thrown away. And you can get all the 3-inch pots, 4-inch pots you ever wanted, and they would be expensive otherwise, completely free. And you're doing the planet a favor by reusing these types of containers. So that's what you can do for containers. Make your own using paper. Okay, you just get a glass jar. Glass jars work better than tins because tins usually have some ridging on the design, and it's hard to get the paper pot that you're going to use, that you're going to wrap around that, you're going to make on that container. You're going to have a hard time getting it off. But glass seems to be a little bit easier. Now I'm going to show you this video really quickly. Now the video might be, it might flutter and all that, or might be a little bit jerky, but the sound is clear. And this lady's just going to do a demo for you so that I don't have to. And the hyperlink is down below for later if you ever want to watch it. And of course, after this, probably the video may not be available of this this little seminar, but at least a PDF. And the PDF will have those hyperlinks attached to these photos. And you'll be able to go straight to the YouTube channel, that particular YouTube channel, and watch it in full. Okay. Oops.
Sunflower and all the others look like. But while we're on the round pots, these are the easiest to make. Literally takes you no time at all. So let's start with that. All you'll need are jars. So glass jars, look for ones that are straight-sided rather than tapered. It'll make it easier for the pot to come off of. And then you'll need newspaper. So this is half of a spread, and I've just cut it in half just down the center seam. And then you just fold it lengthways once, and this is to make the larger pot that I've shown you. Give it a good crease, just like that. And then take your pot and the end that's like the bottom of the jar, have that at the top and give yourself a good 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch, and just roll the newspaper up and over that jar, all the way to the end. Super easy. And then once you have it like this, all you do is just scrunch the newspaper down into the jar. It's as easy as that. To get it off, you just need to pull that jar out, and that's why you leave that little bit of space. So you've got that there. There's still quite a bit of paper on the inside, so we're just going to squish that down. Just use the front of your fist. And voila. Dead easy, isn't that?
Okay, so that just gives you an idea of how to make those. And probably for copyright reasons, I should do my own and put my own video footage in there. But I've left the hyperlink, and for you, so you can easily watch it again or whatever. And the thing is too is this is fantastic for kids. I mean, kids love doing this kind of thing. So make it a community event with your family, and end up talking about things they might not talk about if you are looking at them straight in the eye and trying to get something out of them. You know, if people are comfortable, they may share things that surprise you, and they might be more open to share their lives with you. So number 6, how much space do I need for my startups? All right, so create space for your startups. Well, you'll need a fair amount of space, but if you handle it right, you won't need that much, but you can start a lot. Yeah, this is our system, our seedling start system on the right there, and I can start 1,000 seeds in the type of trays you see that are inside there. I can start 1,000 plants in that. It is, I think, 4.5 feet long and 6-7 feet high, and it takes up about 1.5 feet of depth from the wall out. So this is in my office at home, and we're able to start so many plants using a system like this. This is one that I just put together. A good friend of mine provided the metal and the expertise on welding, and I made the boxes and put in some pond rubber. And then now that pond rubber, all I do is pour water into there, and I know exactly how much I need in order to water all those cells evenly. And then it's much easier to take care of in water rather than having to water all of those constantly. And so anyway, vertical systems, of course, that's what I'm featuring here. You can have flat systems or tabletop systems or linear. And if you can do the linear, it's really great. Okay, here's some other examples of the same kind of idea. And you'll notice most of these seedling starting setups do not require grow lights, like expensive hydroponic lights, lights that are used for hydroponics. But we'll talk about lighting just a little bit. Okay, but these are kind of nice here. Here is a flat, sort of a top system that we use. That's on the other side of where the seedling station is, and we've just made a sort of we had made, a friend of ours made a little structure that fits right over top of our aquarium there, and we use, in this case, it is a light for hydroponics, and it has 6 lights across from left to right. It's a canopy light system, and so we start things there. I like starting the herbs there because more heat and brighter growing light and all that. And I also like these seedling systems with the transparent hoods, as I said, and you can see the condensation building inside, which means it's not escaping the system. It's recycling back into the system and costs you less watering time, less water. And the moderate amount that these cost to purchase is just really worth it to me. All right, so reserve space for, what is that word up there? What does that say? For mature, okay. Reserve space for mature seedlings. So as the seedlings in the left side, as they got bigger, of course, I needed to move them into bigger containers for those that transplant easily. And so you see on the floor there, those are them in their, their sort of mature seedling size format. And we are getting ready to get them outside and start to get them hardened before we transplant them into the garden. Because you just take a plant that's been grown indoors, you transplant it out in that sun and the wind, it will fry that plant and the wind will decimate it. So there are things we can do to strengthen that, but indoors, but you need that outside hardening time. And it takes about a week or two to do that. And that will just help you a lot. It takes us 6 minutes a day, 3 minutes for two of us to put them outside, in the morning, and 3 minutes to take them down at night, or whenever we need to. At first, it's only a few hours. You bring them in, and then later you can leave them all day and bring them in. And when that happens, by the time they're all day out there and they look great, when you bring them in, then they're ready to plant into the garden. But you need, they are living things, so they do have requirements, needs, and you have to make sure that we don't test them too much by putting them through too much stress. Okay, number 7, how much light will my seedlings need? And this is one of the most important things with starting your seedlings indoors. A lot of people will say, hey, I just got this south facing window, I'm going to put them in front of the window. And for some people it kind of works, but for the most part you'll get long stringy, long leggy plants, and they're weak and they just fall over, and you wonder, well, man, how are they ever going to last outside if they're like this? Well, it's because they didn't really have enough light. They need strong light when they just first pop out of the soil. That's when they need it. And you need that light like 2 to 3 inches above them. Just as they poke out of the soil, that's when you want them right there, so that plant knows immediately it's getting all the light it needs, and it can work on building a thick stalk and wide, broad leaves right from the get-go, instead of stretching up, and then producing stuff when it gets closer to the light and receiving the light requirements. So here are some general guidelines if you're buying lights. And again, these are just fluorescent lights, and you don't need more than that for seedlings. But brightness matters. And what you want is lumens. That's the brightness of the light, 2,000 to 3,000 lumens. And then for Kelvin, that Kelvin tells you the type of light that it is. In this case, when you're at 45 to 6,500 Kelvin, that's more of a daylight. So it has a daylight spectrum. That's what you want. 3 inches above the top of the plants provides warmth and greater intensity of light. Even from the beginning, I will put them that low, and then I'll pour water into the trays to water them, but I will keep it that low because a lot of these seeds don't germinate until the temperature of the growing medium, the potting mix itself, is at 70 degrees Fahrenheit or 20 C. So that's why lights are that close. It'll provide the warmth that system needs to activate those plants. And now here's the other thing is, a lot of people don't leave the lights on enough. And well, once those little seedlings come out, you want to leave that light on 13 to 16 hours a day. That's 2/3 of a day. The only amount of hours that you want to keep them off is whatever is left, 16 and 8. Okay, so 8 hours. So 8 hours in darkness, but the rest of the time in the light. Now, as I said, it broadens the leaves, develops thick stalks instead of long, leggy, weak ones. And you can watch this video. I took this slide off a video, and I'm going to just show you this. I'm not going to show you this video now. You can go and see it later. Utilize the link at the bottom, and she'll go through different setups. Well, maybe I can. Maybe we can go through.
If you're going to
Some
take the
of it.
time to start your vegetable seedlings indoors, the best way to make sure they are strong and healthy when it comes time to move them out into the garden is to grow them under indoor lights. Seedlings
Okay.
are nice and strong. There's
Well,
many
then she
ways.
shows different kinds
Now,
of
another
lights.
way I really like to use
And
this
then
plant
lighting
light, a lot of you have
systems.
done this from the first garden series or from the $10 garden series.
Oops. Oh dear. All right, try that again.
If you're going to take the time to start.
So I just paused it for a moment because what she's going to show you is different setups, lighting setups that you can build at home. Now, depending on your needs, if you're just going to have a little herb thing, a little few pots with herb thing, you don't need a big lighting system. You need a smaller one. Well, I'm just going to show you, just sort of go quickly through this and show you the systems. There's a system right there. Fill that container with sand and put a PVC in there, and then you can use a light system like that, and it starts up those seedlings. Okay, so that's for when you don't have many. Now this one is utilizing a Rubbermaid, so that creates a lot of warmth in there too, right? You can get some warmth in there, and then you can grow that anywhere in the house, in the dark, if it's cool downstairs, because you're gonna get that light. And she's sort of wrapped the insides with foil, and you get multiple light sources bouncing off of itself. It gets a lot of light, and so you can grow in there. So the one I like more, where you can do more with, is this one. It's kind of like the first setup she had, but now she's got a PVC setup on the right side and on the left side, drilled some holes in there, attached a chain so that you can adjust the height of that light depending on the height of the seedlings as they grow. So I really like this. And notice she's used boxes and bricks to get those seedlings very close up to the light. I do like that one. I think most families would do a lot. You can start probably 200 to 300 plants in a setup like that. Well, let me see. Now that was just the one. So I would say, I know I'm wrong. Yeah, I would say about maybe 100 plants. Okay, so there's that system. And now this is more of a commercial system. These are actually grow lights. The plants can reach maturity with this kind of light. Of course, you don't want a plant that grows too tall, otherwise that light begins to dim at the higher it goes. So here she's got a double system for a double wide potting scenario. And so there you go. And so anyway, that's all I wanted to show you from that, just to give you an idea. Now 8, how much water will my seedlings need? So, here you can benefit your startup, or you can kind of ruin it here. And, for us, water is great. We need water. We thrive with water. We'll die without water. But if we drink too much water, we drown and we die. And it's the same thing with seedlings. If you drown them, they just won't work. They just won't make it. So here's the general idea. Vegetable varieties consistently moist, not wet. And you can use a little spray sort of container there that person is using when the plants are very young, or when it's still in the seed form. Just kind of soak it from the top using a light misty spray application. And but they can't dry out. If they're that small and they dry out, you'll never get them back. And so you have to be on it. And that's the thing. There are many benefits to starting your seedlings, but you need to be ready to invest real time in making sure, especially when they're little, making sure that those babies, they get their food when they want it and when they need it. And with herbs and spices, herb plants and spice plants are generally the same plants, but they are called herbs in their fresh form and spices in their dry form. So, but the general rule here is damp, not wet. And for hot peppers, keep it moist with a few drier spells. So they kind of like boom and bust. They're kind of like the Canadian economy. They wanted wet or fairly moist, but then a little bit of a drying out time. It almost seems like this feast and famine on water seems to do well with them. And what do you use in the wintertime? What kind of water do you use? You don't want to use tap water because it's got, in red here, we've got not just chlorine, but chloramine in the water. That's chlorine and ammonia pushed together. I mean, that doesn't sound like a great combination to try and get tiny seedlings to thrive. And so you want at least at minimum to use filtered water. But what I like is to use melted snow or rain water. But don't have rain in the winter, so grab some snow, and I'll show you a picture of that later. Grab some snow, melt it, and there you've got your water. The one thing I wanted to mention too is when you're starting your seedlings and your seeds, you're trying to get the temperature of the soil up to around 20 C, 70 degrees centigrade, 20 C, 70 degrees Fahrenheit. So you don't want to pour freezing water on that, right? Get it up to room temperature, get it warmish, get about 20, 25 degrees and pour that into your systems to keep the warmth there. And that's what I would suggest, especially with herbs and spices. You can't get it going. You need that lighting, you need that time, you need the right amount of moisture, but it needs warmth. So use warmer water. And that's why I suggested having that heating pad under, when you're starting herbs. But just do what you can. And of course, in this system here, here's my son. He is just pouring water in this whole tray, and all of those plants are sucking it up. These are not for transplanting seeds. Those are microgreens, and we're just going to eat them. That's why they're so thick and full right there, because we're just going to use a scissors or a knife or whatever and chop some microgreens whenever we need it. Okay, but here's the system I'm talking about. And there is, like what I said before, see those tomatoes in the back? They're very tall and the peppers are low here. So in this case, I have more of a hydroponic light. So these lights can still benefit the peppers, but they have to be, be a fair space above the tomatoes on the left. So that's what I'm saying. To have a lower system and a higher system, two lighting systems, that's probably what you want to do, especially for plants that grow at different speeds. Okay, here's the melting snow thing. And we did at our house. This is Libby, our friend, and that was her. She sometimes came to the house to help, well, often came to the house to help. So there she is melting the snow on the right, and just get it warm and then deliver it to her plants. And a little bit of snow, I mean, it does create a lot of water. You think it would melt into nothing, but there is a lot of water there, as you can see. And it melts very fast. Okay, how do I plant my seeds? All right, so good potting mix. And you can buy some good potting mixes. And if you're starting out, probably better not to make your own. Buy some potting mix. Miracle Grow, it does work great. And then the other one, which is preferred by a lot of people, is the Pro Mix potting mixes. And the one on the right, if you have a lot of seedlings, you can get, this giant compressed square of Pro Mix. And the nice thing, it has what's called the mycorrhizae. And what that is it's been inoculated with mycorrhizae fungi. And that is a root enhancer. So, and if you have a small operation, this will last you for a few seasons. And if you have a fairly large operation, it'll still last you for a few seasons because it does not take very much to fill the little cells in those trays. Okay, plant and label your seeds. Okay, you can make your own. You can buy them or make your own. And here, this is myself and my wife's taking photos, actually a video. We snapped some shots off the video. And just made a little screening system on top of our wheelbarrow. And the top left, you see, I'm putting it together, and then I'm putting my compost, our compost that we make in there. Then I'm sliding it back and forth on the top right. And you can see, and then it's a 1/4-inch screen, and it filters down through into the wheelbarrow. And then on the bottom left, it's filtered now, and just the bigger pieces, the stuff that are not good for, not so good for starting seeds, we keep them out of the system and put them back into the compost. And there you see on the bottom right, that is the consistency of compost that we get from filtering it. And so we do I do a kind of little bit of both. I'll do potting mix, but if we get a really good compost, I'll sift some of that, and then we'll use that when the time comes in the middle of the winter to start up some seedlings. Okay, plant and label your seeds, and here's the problem. And I'm bad at this. You know, we're better now, but I used to be really bad at this. We'd get a really great plant going, and then we didn't have it labeled properly, and we forgot what variety it was. So now you did all that work, you finally found a variety that was fantastic for your place, and now you don't know what it is. So number of seeds per container, I do 2, sometimes 3, but 2 is plenty for most, because most of them have 80 to 90%, 95% germination success rate. Number of seeds per container, 2 or 3. Try and space them apart, even though you put them in a little one of those discs or whatever. Try and at least get like an inch apart if you can. And one of those is going to grow and be better than the other one usually. And so as they grow, once they're established, then you can snip with the scissors, you can snip the weaker one out, and then leave the stronger one, because it's going to give you a better root system and possibly better fruit at the end. And then the proper depth. What is the, what's the proper depth? Every seed is a different size. And you've got cucumber seeds, you've got peas, you've got whatever, lettuce, they're quite a bit smaller. But measure, if you look at the length of that seed, just double that length, and that is the depth that you should plant the seed. A lot of people plant the seeds too deep. And you have to think, in that little seed is all the energy that it's going to take. It has all the energy needed for that seedling to get up into the sunlight. And if you plant them down too deep, it's going to run out of energy before it can break surface, and it won't take. So double the length of the seed. So you can imagine with carrots, that's not very deep. And with some herbs, I mean, they're just like almost like specks. You'll just put them on the surface of the potting mix, and then maybe take your fingers and just sprinkle a little bit of potting mix over top of them, and just so they're barely covered, because that's already double the length of their size. And for that reason, for herbs and spices, you need to be careful that it doesn't dry out too much. So really, if you're going to herbs and spices, you have to commit yourself to checking a few times a day, just to make sure they're not going to get too dry. All right, potting mix. You place the mix in a box or a Rubbermaid, and then it's easier to fill those cells. And no mess, no fuss. And here we're transplanting from the cells into a bigger pot, and we add a little bit of organic fertilizer at that point. It's just pure natural. In this case, it is dried manure. Okay, so then you fill the containers and press firmly. And this is a mistake some people make. When they put the potting mix in, they're afraid to make it a little bit firm. So what I would suggest, instead of dry like I'm showing here, try and wet your potting mix a bit so that it's damp, so it's at least sort of dry damp. And then take that, fill the cells, and then press them down. Because seeds, once the roots start coming out, those roots need resistance in order to kind of continue. And it can't be too loose down there, it won't go well. So press firmly, and so that they can develop quickly. Now here you see a bunch of our transplants that we started from the little cells, put them into all these different kinds of containers, but they're labels. Dollar store, great. You can buy these. And what we often do is we'll put a little bit of painter's tape on there, and then at the end of the season, you can take the painter's tape off, and you can take the painter's tape off and then use it again next year. But if you write on here with some permanent thing, you're gonna have to use this for the same variety again. And I would just use a little bit of painter's tape, and away it goes. And it lasts pretty good. You know, it lasts pretty long. You can buy these as well. These can be a little bit more expensive, but make sure when you write down what it is, you just don't put beans, but you put the variety. Okay, and so that will help you make decisions the next year. my favorite is, again, taking these yogurt containers, and then I cut with the scissors down, and I make long strips like this. See this? Make long strips. And these are just perfect as label. And you get about 20 labels per one of these yogurts containers. And I really like that. And then especially, and you can make them longer or shorter according to your needs, your lighting needs. Yet, like if you need the light 2 inches above your plant and it's right there, well, obviously this is too long of a label to put in your little cell there. But anyway, this is a very inexpensive way. Again, get the kids going on it. They'll love it. All right. How do I enhance root growth? Now, that's the other thing. Once the plants start growing, what can I add to the potting mix that will really get those roots to get going? Okay, here it is. Add airflow. Number one, add airflow. If you have an electric fan, once your seedlings are up, get a fan on there about 5 hours a day. And the shaking of that plant will signal the plant to grow a stockier, wider, broader, deeper root system. Because it realizes, the condition, the environment up there requires me to hold on to my position more. So that little shaking of the wind against those plants will signal that plant to get going and build a strong root system. Okay, and then it says here, transplant seedlings into larger containers with added natural fertilizer. Now I mentioned the manure, the dried manure that comes in pellets, but I really like this, a new one I've been trying, and you can get it in Alberta easily. It comes out of BC from old extinct volcanic rock. It's called Can Amaze, or play on word, can amaze you. It can amaze you. So Can Amaze, available in Red Deer in 50-pound bags for $40. And this is what it looks like right here. It's so finely grounded. It feels just like velvet. And that's what you want. You want the powdery, fine, dusty kind of addition to your potting mix, because it's in that state that it becomes more immediately accessible to the plant. If you put a chunk of something like just, eggs, and you crush those eggs and you put them in it, it'll take like 3 months for those eggshells to break down, even in their crushed form, before they're mostly available for your plants. Now, here you see we have just a small plant, and this is basil, and it's created this huge root structure. And that's what happens when you are able to add a little bit of root enhancement powder or some kind of help along the way. Now you can make your own, and there are recipes here. And the thing that enhances the root systems are phosphorus, potassium, and some nitrogen. And human urine has that. So if you add a little bit of human urine to your seedling starts, but you have to break it down, 9 parts water, 1 part urine, and just one time inoculate it with that. It won't smell bad at all. I mean, at a 10%, it's not going to smell bad or anything like that. But you've got phosphorus, you've got potassium, you've got nitrogen, NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. That's what you've got in your urine, and also 6 trace elements as well, at least. Okay, at the very least. And anyway, I've given you how to use even honey. You can use honey or willow branches. The details are there. How do I prepare my plants to thrive in outdoor weather? Okay, so you got to harden them, as I said before. You can't just transplant them out there, or they will go flabby on you, or they'll just die. So to prepare them, blow air on your seeds with a fan while they're growing indoors. And then when do you take them outside? When outdoor temperatures at night don't go below 5 degrees. And I would wait till it's like a solid 6-8 degrees before you take them out. And especially as they get a bit stronger, you're not going to need to take them indoors. You're going to be able to leave them outdoors. But that's after, a week, 2 weeks, something like that. And now limit their exposure at first, just a couple hours. 1 hour is not too little, but I would say like a couple of hours for sure for the first few days, slowly increasing time. So at about a week and a half, they're out there all day and sometimes all night. So mini shelters. if you want to leave them out overnight, you can protect them from frost by putting them under a little bit of a shelter, like a mini greenhouse, or just covering it with plastic and, and keeping it raised somehow above them. Or you could have a little greenhousey kind of a thing and just put a ceramic heater in there. These ceramic heaters only cost $20, $30, but they'll keep it nice and warm in there, and you won't have to worry about all that hard work of yours going to waste because they get too cold. It's not about even frost, it's about they get too cold. So below 5 degrees, they're going to freeze, and that will also kill them. So here is, I don't know, I don't think you can see these, but these are some of my plants. Notice I've had air on them. I've done what I've asked you to do. Look how thick those stalks are on those small tomato plants. Those are nice and thick, and look how healthy they are as well. So here we are, just to show you, we're just taking these out, and you can see we have them in the trays. And so for 2 people, we go and put them out on the table out there. And literally, it doesn't take us more than 3 minutes in and 3 minutes out, and then at night, 3 minutes in. It's not, and those are hundreds. We're putting hundreds of plants out there at night, and the ones on top of the aquarium, they're going to get out there as well. So sometimes we'll have hundreds and hundreds of out there, and it just takes us just a few minutes to throw them out, a few minutes to bring them in, and that's it. Okay. I notice there, it's probably a little bit choppy, but you can see the wind. That's the wind outside. It's fairly strong. It's not affecting the strength. It's not bending them that much. They're strong roots, strong stalks. They're good to go. Now here's a system that you can use if you want to start outside, but you need, and you want to be sure that they don't get frosted at night. Just build something like this. And this fellow uses egg cartons, and he was able to get them going because he put down some peat moss down first and wet that so that the plants in the egg cartons didn't dry up. I think it's kind of taking a risk to start them in egg cartons. The idea sounds fantastic, but there's very little potting mix in those, and they dry out so fast. So unless you're on top of it, or unless you put that peat moss and soak that in, and you have that lid, you might find yourself in a little bit of trouble. And also, it's not a lot of potting mix to be able to, hold the plant and transplant it without the whole thing falling apart. Okay, number 12, we're just about done. What should I know about transplanting my young plants into the garden? Okay, when you plant, how deep should you plant them? Well, slightly below ground level. Often I'll see people that they transplant, and when it's done, it's almost like a little mound above the level ground. You don't want that. You want at least maybe just down below the level a little bit for most plants. And that's how we've done. You see the picture there. That's how we've done that there for our cauliflower and some cabbages. All right, so natural additives that you can use when you transplant. Now, I don't mind additives, but let them be natural. And some of them are like bone meal. So bone meal, again, it's the bone meal that builds the roots. And you can use bat guano or green sand. Look at how they're quite expensive. And then also mycorrhizal fungi. You can inoculate. As with the ProMix, you can buy this at Parkland Nurseries. Go there and buy mics. And now just make sure you get the one for vegetables and not for shrubs. So, and this goes a long way. You just add a little bit into the, where you transplant from your seedling little pots or cells into the garden, and that will help to really enhance their root systems. A special note regarding tomatoes. Now, you see these tomatoes are growing up. How deep should you plant the tomatoes? Well, look at this tomato right in the front. You see those, the red area on the stem and those little white nodules coming out. And then you see these 2 leaves, and they're different than all the other leaves. Those are called the first leaves. So what you want to do is you want to bury them right up to the first leaves, because all those white nodules, they will also become roots. And so now you're really giving that tomato a boost. an opportunity to grow the kind of root system to provide you with more and strong tomatoes. And this is what people don't do. They don't plant them deep enough. And I haven't done that in the past, and now I'm doing it. And this last season, it was much, much better. Okay, and there you can see the last thing you want to do when you transplant, cover the ground right around as much as possible with some kind of mulch. Not right up touching the stalks, but maybe a couple inches out. I could have had a little bit more here, but really try and get some kind of a mulch, straw or whatever, and cover the ground, any of the bare ground, or cover it all, and you will hold in the moisture. And it will have sort of a balanced or a steady percentage of moisture in that soil. It won't be like boom and bust. Tomatoes, they want it. They want their moisture when they want it. They don't like, tomatoes do not like, you know, like the peppers. They don't want it hot season, rainy season, hot season, rainy. They want a steady stream of a steady amount of water so that they can not worry about, not worry about shutting down and trying to fix themselves because of the lack of water or too much water. And you want optimal conditions for them so they can just grow and produce. Now, why not up to the stalks? Well, if the stalks are too wet, they can start some rotting, and also bugs can, get in there. Slugs can be a problem. So I would take coffee grounds and maybe eggshells and grind them down a little bit. And I would put it like about a 3-inch wide ring around that stalk because they do not like the scratchiness on their underbelly. So slugs will tend to stay away from that. And you get a little bit of calcium. Now, this is a square foot gardening setup. You plant more seeds within a square foot than if you just use rows. We started with this, but we went kind of ballistic and decided instead of a garden to grow a food forest. And so this is what it looked like this last summer. And it is just full of food, and you notice no bare soil. And that's, now you can get into other difficulties if it's too packed in there. But all of these varieties are companion varieties, and we did space them. It looks like it's full, but it's just there. Each of them are filling the space, but different spaces. They're not overlapping too much. They're touching, but not overlapping too much. And so it's full of food. And these are from our seedling starts. And some of them we did direct seed, but a lot of this was from our seedling starts. Okay, thank you for participating. Rob, you were very, you didn't interrupt me at all on this one. Well, we're trying to make this into a video as well. So Rob knows me, and so he was happy to be part of this presentation. Now, if you like more of these presentations, just contact me by email. You see my email down there. And that's some of the food that comes out of our front yard. Now, you think we just have a regular small, front yard, but the last few years we've been growing about 330 kilos of food, 700 pounds of food or so, just on what used to be mostly grass, 1 spruce tree, and 1 apple tree. But now we grow all kinds of things. This is a short little mini seminar on starting your seedlings. I hope you've had a good time. I hope that there's enough information to get you to planning and making a plan. Now you need to make your own. Each place has its own unique qualities and scenarios, but these are the basics for starting seeds indoors. So have lots of fun, get excited. We're coming into the growing season soon, and I want you to be successful. Have a good day.